The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Hello, I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involving our justice system, our legal system, and how they intersect with the citizens of the town of Colonie. Today, we are truly fortunate to have as our guest Judge Karen K. Peters, the Presiding Justice of the 3rd Department Appellate Division. And Judge, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
It's a very big special honor for the citizens of the town of Colonie to have you here.
Thank you.
And to speak just a little bit. We all know that the limited time that we have on this show could not ever capture the length and breadth of your practice as a private counsel and also serving on the judiciary since 1992. And thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. I always like to talk to the public.
Well, Judge, many times I'm asked about the different court levels, the systems, the levels of our court system, and of course, I know I serve as in the town court system, and you are the presiding justice of the appellate division. Judge, could you tell us what that means in the pecking order of our court system?
Well, yeah, and let me tell you what it means to the people who live in this town. Generally speaking, actually, you are the judge of the courts that's the closest to the people, because the people see you for traffic tickets and for disputes between neighbors and, you know, the dog that got out of the fence and went on somebody's property. And those are the cases that really are the closest to the people. But there are also people who are the victims of serious crimes that don't get heard in your court. They get heard initially, and then they get moved to what we call county court. And there are individuals that are involved in serious litigation concerning custody, visitation, divorce, car accidents, medical malpractice, and they all are heard in what's called the Supreme Court. In addition, there's a family court, and I'm sure some people who are watching this TV have found themselves there, which, as you know, concerns domestic violence, abuse, neglect, adoption, custody, visitation. And then there's the surrogate court, which is involved to a great extent with trusts and estates. There's also another court, that trial court in New York, that some people are aware of, but many aren't, called the Court of Claims. And that's where you go when you want to sue the state, which some people do, and some people are successful. Not a lot, but some people are successful. All of those trial courts, except yours, actually, if you're unhappy as a litigant with the outcome in that court, if you're convicted of a crime and you feel you were wrongly convicted, or if a verdict was rendered in your accident case where you slipped and fell and leaving the library in the town of Colonie, if you might, and you're unhappy with the verdict, you can come to our court. And we are the intermediate appellate court in the state of New York. So we hear appeals from all the trial courts in 28 counties. My jurisdiction runs from Orange County in the south to the Canadian border in the north, to the Vermont border in the east, and over to Binghamton in the west. So it's a very large amount of the landmass of New York State. And all of the trial courts in those 28 counties, anybody appeals, it comes to us. And we sit right next door to the Capitol in Albany, in the Justice Building. So we hear a large number of appeals. Right now there are 9 judges. There are supposed to be 12, and we're hoping the governor will appoint 3 more someday. And we hear about 1,800 to 2,000 appeals a year.
Wow. And has that been constant now for some time, Judge, or does it continue to move inch forward?
Continues to inch forward.
Yeah.
And if you're unhappy with what we do, and of course, you know, there are usually at least 2 sides to the litigation, you can request that the Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state of New York, which sits in Albany as well, hear your case, although they don't hear very many.
Judge, the appellate division not only serves in that appellate process, but also there are other items and other subject matter areas that the appellate division has to also monitor, manage, and supervise. And what are the other areas of law that your department will actually be involved in?
Well, we do some interesting things that I think probably the citizens might not expect from us. For example, we we run the Committee on Professional Standards. And the Committee on Professional Standards is the organization that citizens go to when they are unhappy with the way they've been treated by their lawyer. If they feel they've been overcharged or they feel the attorney's done something unethical, they can file a complaint with the Committee on Professional Standards of the Appellate Division 3rd Department. And the committee itself, which is made up of private citizens and lawyers, will review the complaint and determine whether formal charges should be filed against the attorney. And if formal charges are filed, then that case comes to us in the Appellate Division, and we decide whether the attorney should be disciplined. He or she can be censured, they can be suspended, or they can even be disbarred, which we do take care of. So it's important for the citizens to understand that we provide that service in reviewing allegations of misconduct by lawyers. We also manage what's called Mental Hygiene Legal Services, and that agency provides legal services to individuals who are suffering from mental illness in a hospital setting and assists them in determining if they're going to be committed against their will. They have the right to a hearing, and we represent them. We have a whole cadre of lawyers that do that across the entire department. And in addition, we do one other thing that I think is critical for the citizenry to be aware of, and that's called the Independent Judicial Elections Qualification Commission. I'll say that again because it's a mouthful. The Independent Judicial Elections Qualification Commission. And that is made up of private citizens and attorneys who interview candidates for elective office, any kind of judgeship, and rate the candidates. And those ratings are publicized every year before Election Day so that the public can determine, if they wish, how individuals who have expertise in assessing the qualifications of judges have assessed that individual and whether they found them qualified or unqualified or highly qualified. And you can find out about that on our website or in the press.
And Judge, it's not just that, and certainly continue to be modest about what you're presiding over, but your department also provides for the admission of new attorneys as well. And I know my oldest daughter was just sworn in 2 years ago in connection with this, with your supervisory capacity there on admission.
We do, and in New York State, people to be admitted to the practice of law generally have to pass the New York State Bar Association, the New York State Bar examination, and be determined to be qualified intellectually and experientially to practice law. But they also have to be ethically appropriate, and we review their background and their ethics. And because the Appellate Division 3rd Department sits in the Capitol, we have the power to admit all lawyers from all over the world to the practice of law in New York State. So if you don't have an office in New York City or in Queens or in Brooklyn, and you happen to work for a firm that's out of Shanghai or Moscow or any place in the world, and you take the New York State Bar exam, you come here to get admitted to the practice of law, usually with your suitcase, sometimes with your spouse, sometimes with your children. And we admit 4,000 people to the practice of law every single year here in Albany.
Wow. And that number, as compared to the other states in the union, does that number represent more admits than other states combined will do, or how does that work?
Yeah, we admit more people to the practice of law than any state in the entire United States except California.
Just your department
Just
that you
my
preside
department.
over?
Yes.
Wow.
So we have a large number of people who review the applications, and we also have a cadre of lawyers here in this department who voluntarily assess the qualifications of candidates and hold hearings if there's a question about their ability to practice law and their ethical status. And they do it voluntarily. They don't get paid a penny. It's just part of their pro bono work, and we appreciate so much that they do that for us.
Well, Judge, we've been so lucky here in Albany County to call you our own for so many years, and you're one of a proud member of our Albany County Bar Association.
And have been for a very long time, yes.
And that makes us so happy. You started practicing in Ulster County. Is that years ago?
Correct. Yeah, I don't live in Albany County. I actually live in Woodstock, the famous Woodstock.
Yeah.
But I've been up here in Albany working for many, many years. But yes, I started practicing in Ulster County, actually in the justice courts, the kind of court
There you are, Judge.
I cut my teeth in the justice courts and learned a lot about people and a lot about law and loved every minute of it.
Well, and then obviously your meteoric rise in the practice of law, your capacity was well recognized in a variety of ways, and including by state government. I think at one point you were brought into the state assembly, into the Capitol, to share your expertise with them, even before you became Ulster County Family Court judge.
That's true. I actually started in state government as counsel to the New York State Division of Alcoholism and Alcohol Abuse, which was involved at the time in managing 28 alcohol treatment centers across the state, and also providing the executive with guidance on how to involve citizens in dealing with the alcohol problem that was emerging across the state, including fetal alcohol syndrome, which was at that point just being discussed scientifically. So I began in the executive and then moved to the legislature, running the Government Operations Committee, and then eventually ran for family court in Ulster County. And I served for 9 years as a family court judge in that county and loved every minute of it, despite the exhaustion that comes from working in family court.
Well, there's no question the caseloads that family court has and the caseloads on large justice courts like the town of Colonie can be very taxing, and sadly what we're seeing is they're standing room only. And Judge, I always believe the best courtroom is an empty one, and we continue to be called upon to manage so many avenues and parts of people's daily lives in a variety of ways, sometimes 3 in the morning and sometimes at 9 a.m. But
well, the town court does it at 3 in the morning. Family court doesn't.
Right. I think that the town judge becomes a family court judge at 5 p.m.
Exactly. You do.
And we're in.
And you know, I think the most important thing about family court that I found in my time there is that, like justice court, it's the court of the people. You know, if you ask 1,000 people who live here in the state of New York whether they've ever been to court, usually the answer is they've either been to town justice court or to family court. And because of that, it's critical that the judges of those courts understand the needs of people and attempt to meet the needs of people in a very basic, fair way. I think that we have to be more ethical and more concerned about people's needs in those courts, probably than any other.
Well, and we continue to do that, and thank you for continuing to recognize that. And that underscores your capacity and vision for looking over an entire court system and developing enhancements for all of us to benefit by. Just last year, and Judge, I have to tell you, today is the 1-year anniversary of when you and I cut the ribbon to open the Albany County Family Court Center on May 6th.
I didn't know that. That's great.
And
well, I'm glad to be with you again.
And I know many of the residents in the town already recognize this, but this was a monumental task, once again shepherded by Judge Peters, when New York City and the access to justice officials looked upstate to wonder how they could implement an increased access to justice. They had to look no farther than the Albany County Bar Association, Judge Karen Peters, and the Albany County Family Court to take the existing help desk that the Albany County Bar started 10 years ago and using that as a footprint and model and expanding it under your guidance and leadership into a help center has been a home run down there at the Family Court. We are now staffing it with attorneys.
I know that.
And providing more access to justice so that people who come in pro se and aren't sure where to begin or how to begin, they're given the assistance they need, which, by the way, benefits the judicial branch as well. So by the time the judge has something, it is in order. That's the hope, that the matter and the petition is in somewhat order so that it can more efficiently deal with what's in front of it.
Well, but you're a bit humble about this, because the truth is, it was the Bar Association that really spearheaded this program. You know, all I do, just because I have connections to New York City that you know, the local bar might, is just move some of the assets up. And that's what I was able to do. Well,
you're modest in that way, Judge. And of course, the Albany County Bar Association just last February recognized your input there and your leadership there by giving you its annual President's Award. But when you look at it, it's a clear, evidence of your ability to lead by consensus. remember the parties that are involved. You have the Albany County Family Court, you had Albany Law School, you had the Legal Aid Society, and the Albany County Bar Association, just to name a few of the players that needed to come together to do this collaboratively.
Well, you know, when you do what I do, which is work as the presiding judge of an appellate court with 9 judges who we sit kind of like, it's like the miniature United States Supreme Court. We used to sit with 5 judges on every case we hear. Now we sit with 4 because we have less judges. But for us, we try very hard to hear the evidence and listen to the lawyers argue. And then we try to reach a consensus on the decision we render so that we can provide guidance to the people that brought the lawsuit and the lawyers that represent them on what the law should be, rather than, you know, doing a lot of different individual writings. We try to speak with one voice. And to do that, you have to learn to communicate with people, and you have to learn how to find a common ground. So that's part of my job. And I hope that's one of the skills I bring to the appellate division.
Well, it's working, and certainly the Albany County Bar Association has recognized it and understands how important it is and how vital it is to the enhancement of justice and the delivery of justice and the access to justice. And other modifications have been made under your watch as the presiding justice of the 3rd Department Appellate Division, including back to the discipline that can be meted out for attorneys after hearing and review of cases. And I understand now, in speaking to you earlier today, that actually now it's easier for citizens to be able to find whether there have been any disciplinary actions taken against an attorney. How does that work, Judge?
Well, yeah, you know, when I became the presiding judge, it came to my attention. I probably knew it before, but I wasn't attending to the problem necessarily from the point of view of citizens, that if you want to hire a lawyer and you want to find out if that attorney's ever been in trouble, kind of like if you want to get a doctor, and you can go on a website in New York State and find out whether the doctor's ever been disciplined. You might want to find out if the lawyer's ever been in trouble, and it was almost impossible to do because the way our unified court system kept track of statistics of lawyers, it was where they were admitted to the practice of law, not necessarily where they worked. So I work here, but I was admitted to the practice of law in Brooklyn decades ago. So we finally created a system of the unified court system now where you can go online and you can check an attorney alphabetically, and you will find out whether that lawyer you're thinking of hiring for the closing or to represent you in a contract case has ever been disciplined and gotten into trouble for failure to promptly resolve a dispute, failure to file the papers timely, whatever. And it allows the public to make an informed decision about who they want to represent them.
Well, it's part of the hallmark of your leadership is to make the appellate division user-friendly.
Absolutely.
And I note that attorneys and litigants who come before the appellate division for proceedings have been given free access to electronic devices in order to maintain what they're doing and correspond with their offices if there's any moment they need to, and it maybe probably and possibly even to be utilized to present an oral argument. Is that what's happening now,
Yeah,
Judge?
and you know, it's interesting because people read about cameras in the courts and the fact that there are no cameras allowed in a trial court when their testimony is being taken. Do you agree with that interpretation?
That's right.
Well, in the appellate division, we don't take testimony. We only have lawyers argue a case after they filed a brief. So we allow the press into our courtroom all the time. And actually, when we had the famous chimpanzee case, we had Russian television, we had British television, we had ABC News, everybody was there. But when I became presiding judge, I was more concerned about the fact that because we hear so many cases in a day, you can come in for a 1 o'clock calendar and not get heard till 4. And I realized that lawyers and litigants could really use that time efficiently rather than just sitting and waiting for their case to get called. So we created an electronic policy that allows individuals to use their laptops, their iPads, their cell phones, actually whatever they have on them, to check with their offices, to read their email, to answer their email, to do whatever they want to do while they're waiting for their case to be called, as long as whatever device they're using is silent. And what I found is that that really serves not just the lawyers, but the litigants, because then the lawyers are using their time wisely while they're waiting for their case to be called. And no other department has that policy yet. I think they're still thinking about it.
Well, you certainly, that's just another credit to your forward-looking leadership about how to make the court user-friendly and in that way. And that certainly has probably been well received by a variety of practitioners in the courthouse.
Well, it's about surveying. When I first got on the bench, I also insisted that we put the calendar on our website, the day calendar on our website right away, so that lawyers and litigants could find out when they're coming to court, when they're going to be scheduled, and ensured them that they needed to check it ahead in case we move them around. But the more information you have as a person, the more powerful you can be. Right?
That's right.
And that's what we try to provide, is the most information we can, including getting our cases done in a speedy fashion so that we serve the public.
Well, and they keep coming toward you like the dockets of all of our courts in the state of New York, Judge. And speaking of electronics, too, some time ago I had Federal Magistrate Randy Treese here, and we talked a little bit, and we spoke a little bit about the federal system's use of electronic filing and e-filing and doing and providing written arguments and papers by electronically filing, and we spoke about one of my pet projects here, seeking video arraignments and connectivity between the correctional facility and the Colonie court to get defendants access to a judge much quicker. If a defendant is put into the correctional facility at 3 a.m., I want to provide that defendant the access to a judge at 8:30 in the morning so that possibly bail could be set right then and there, rather than wait for that defendant to have to be transported by the sheriff throughout the county to all these different courts. They might not get access to a judge for until that night. And in the meantime, if they could see me at 8:30 online with their attorney standing with them, I could set bail for them that morning. And it's about the defendant's rights that is my primary concern there.
And downstate, they do that.
And they are, and I've worked very hard, and I've had great success working with the Albany County Sheriff. We have developed the connectivity. We have everything in place. There's just, sometimes it takes others a while to understand that it's true value and that the defendant's rights are to be considered the most. It does happen to save the taxpayers a lot of money because it diminishes the transport and the safety issues that could occur when you're transporting others at any time. Something could happen out on the roadways too. So if I can get that done, to deliver justice faster, I would like that chance to do that, even if it's a pilot project for upstate so they can see we can do it. But in the meantime, it seems like the e-filing is starting to move in our state system. Where is it today, Judge, and do you see the appellate division embracing it as well?
Oh, I do. My chief clerk's already working on when we can implement e-filing. Downstate, it's kind of like a wave. And I'm sorry to tell you, but the wave usually begins someplace in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. So the wave of e-filing is happening downstate first, and there's a certain amount of money that's available in the unified court system to fund these kinds of programs. And eventually we will get e-filing, and I think it's necessary. I don't know how much you use electronic devices, but I have an iPad on the bench that I use to communicate with the court clerk, and I read a lot of my work on my iPad, and I find that it's very helpful. And I'm hoping we get there soon.
Well, I know that it is. I believe that it's a necessity, and I think it will save money as well. I'm not sure that the post office is happy, but nonetheless,
it'll save a lot of trees.
It will, along the way.
It'll save a lot of trees.
Judge, you've been a trailblazer in so many ways through the course of your career as an attorney and as a distinguished jurist as well. And I think it's important that our town residents recognize, which they have already, the significant things that you've accomplished and have yet to do, which is really fun for all of us who are practicing law, knowing that you're still here doing more. But they should know, too, that you were the first woman to serve as a Supreme Court judge in this district or in the entire upstate, Judge?
The entire department.
The entire department, which you now preside over. And of
Correct.
course, again, the first woman to preside over the department.
And you know, it's not about ego, but what I love the most about being able to do this is that I didn't come from a family where someone handed this to me. My parents never finished high school. I didn't know what a lawyer was.
Right.
But then my father died, and somebody got appointed, as the guardian because my father died. I didn't know what lawyers were. So what I love about what I do is that when I talk to people, when they learn my story, they understand that anybody can get here. You don't have to have a father who's a lawyer or a mother who's a judge. You can have two parents that never finished high school, nobody in my family ever finished college, and still end up at the top of your game in the appellate division. And I think that's the great part about my life. I never thought I'd be here. Never.
Well, you've been a symbol to all attorneys, and we did a program together last fall at the Albany Law School, a program on how to become a judge. And again, you used your imprimatur, your background, your experience, your consensus building to bring that CLE, or continuing legal education program, which to the area. And to Albany Law School and the Albany County Bar Association. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the moderators as well. But it happened because you made sure it happened. And I have to tell you, and I wrote about it in a county bar newsletter, that I have never seen a CLE more widely attended or more riveting.
Well, that was a politically fascinating time for Albany County when it came to running for office. And I can't describe it in detail because I can't get myself involved in politics, but because of the political nature of the situation at the time we did that CLE, it was just great fun. There were certain things some people felt uncomfortable discussing, but I said, I'm the presiding judge. I'm not running for office again in my lifetime.
Right.
I'm retiring in a few years, so I can ask those tough questions. And it was wonderful, just wonderful. I had so much fun. And I think that people began to understand how critical it is that our judiciary reflect the community it serves. And that means that we need individuals, male, female, black, white, gay, straight, of every dimension serving on the bench. Because then when individuals come before the courts, they can really feel they're being treated fairly. And I've told this story so many times, but the reason why I came to that belief was not because I became a judge and I was the first woman in the history of my county or the first woman in the history of the state, but because my son, who was adopted from India, when he was 3 years old, and I drove him past the family court on my way to take him to daycare before I ran into the courthouse to get my work done, asked me why only boys could be judges and why only girls could be judges and why boys couldn't be judges, because he had only met girl judges in his life. And I realized that there were only 2 girl judges in the entire department, but he knew them and he didn't know any boy judges. And he made me understand that from his point of view, it was so unfair. And he was only 3, but he couldn't be a judge because he was a boy. That's when it hit home. And it made me understand how critical it is that people understand and believe in our justice system. And that means it has to reflect the community it serves. So I've spent a lot of time, as you know, fighting to make sure that our justice system not consist of one kind of person. And I mean by that, I don't want the entire appellate division to be all women either.
Well, I can tell you that your background and experience and your years of work as an attorney have benefited not only the citizens of the town of Colonie, but the entire judicial branch. And I know that as practicing lawyers, we're all very pleased and proud that you continue to trailblaze for the judicial system, which we as attorneys, as agents of the court, recognize as very valuable. And a court system without respect and a court system without responding to the citizenry is not an effective judicial branch. And you have made it that, and you continue to do that. Judge Karen K. Peters, Judge, thank you very much for sharing some time with us today. We certainly can't, half hour doesn't do justice to your significant background and experience. Thank you for doing what you're doing, and carry on, please, and continue to lead the third department for us.
And thank you for doing what you're doing, Judge. We really appreciate it.
I'm very lucky to be able to do whatever I can do, and thank you, Judge.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Judge. I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and thank you for joining me on Benchmark.